Hello, this is Miss Paz Bazaar. This is Unmasked Miss Paz Bazaar. Probably the only time you'll hear me talk like this, because in session I am a lot more masked. So this is going to be a really candid episode, and I'm talking about camouflaging, masking as an autistic person and ADHD, and how harmful it can be, why it happens, and why I encourage everyone, even though it's a privilege, to at least tune in to the moments when they feel compelled to mask. Okay, so for those of you who don't know or unsure, masking versus camouflaging. So there are key differences. What is masking? What is camouflaging? They're terms that often come up when we're discussing the experiences of neurodivergent individuals, especially autistics and ADHDers. So masking, it's basically conscious or unconscious suppression of behaviours, traits, or responses that are naturally part of being neurodivergent. The goal, this is subconscious by the way, the goal is often to fit into neurotypical social norms, to avoid judgment, or simply navigate a world that wasn't designed with us in mind. So some examples: forcing yourself not to stim, even though it helps regulate your emotions. It could be monitoring and altering your tone of voice, facial expressions, body language to appear neutral or normal. Maybe hiding sensory sensitivities, like pretending that loud noises or bright lights don't bother you. And let me tell you, masking is fucking exhausting. It requires a constant demand. It requires a constant mental effort, and it can ultimately lead to burnout and loss of self-identity. And unfortunately, it can lead to mental health challenges like anxiety or depression over time. So today I had a really great day on the way to my sessions, and I've been practicing since I was late diagnosed to really allow myself to unmask in safe spaces, or spaces which are kind of, they're low risk. So, if I'm unmasking around some strangers and I'm in a safe space and I haven't drunk alcohol or something, that I feel safe to do so. So today I decided to unmask on my journey and on the tram. And I felt massive surges of dopamine and serotonin. It was really interesting. So when I say I unmask, what does that mean? So I put my drum and bass on the loudest. Usually I'm like, I shouldn't put it so loud in my headphones because then it could disturb other people and, But I was like, no, I'm going to listen to it. And it's going to be as loud as it can go because that's how I like it. And then I let myself feel the music, and I actually stim a lot with my hands. I still mask to a certain degree because I'm a big vocal stimmer, and by that I mean I sing a lot. I sing randomly in my home, sometimes in conversation. For people who know me, I will sing certain words. So I didn't go as far as singing, but I found that just not sitting, that's another thing. I can't really sit. I find keeping still, as I'm recording this, I'm pacing around. That's probably my biggest struggle with distance domination, to be honest, standing in front of a screen. Again, I can't sit at a desk. So yeah, unmasking involved moving around, allowing myself to smile at the music because that was the natural thing to do, and allowing myself to move to the music. I wasn't freaking breakdancing on the tram, but I was definitely moving, and it was definitely enough to make certain people uncomfortable and look at me like I was a crazy person. But guess what? I didn't care. And I allowed myself, I haven't done this in, I don't even remember how long, like in a public space other than drum and bass gigs. I allowed myself to experience synesthesia, and I got teary-eyed. Like I nearly fucking cried. It was so good. It was like the same feeling as being on drugs. This is the cool thing about allowing yourself to stim. Who needs drugs and alcohol? When you've got a good stim, whew, it releases all those chemicals naturally. Naturally. Seriously, it's such a good thing. It's a drug factory. I've got a drug dealer. That's what stims are to me. It's like, hey, so good. And, you know, I've been seeing a lot of practitioners and therapists, people like my facial lady and my masseuse, things like that. And they've all commented since post-diagnosis, they've all commented, even some friends are like, you sound so much happier, you look so much happier, like what's going on? Some people are like, are you in a new relationship? It's like, I'm in a new relationship with myself. I'm finding out who I am. And I didn't realize how much I was suppressing this trapped energy. And that's why BDSM is a really great way to release that. And so when I say unmask in session, yes, to a certain extent, but I would say that out of everything I do, other than academia, I really get to be me. And by that, I mean, I can speak in blunt affect. I can be really direct. I can just say what I think and it's not going to offend people. Actually, that's my job as a dominatrix. You know, part of my autism assessment was going, because it's a social, like struggling with social cues, right? Part of my assessment, it was really fucked up going back, and particularly women, like female relationships. Like I love girls, don't get me wrong, like I really love them. Romantically, I prefer dating women. I'm pansexual, but yeah. Anyway, I'm attracted to all genders and sexualities, but for me, if I'm in a relationship, I just, yeah, prefer to be with women. Anyway, but socially, I find I've always kept, my best friends have been male, and I'm not being sexist here, but the way that women are socialized to be, it's like keep the peace, keep the harmony, don't say something that's, you know, not so direct. I find that is, especially working in full service brothels, I found that you don't say the truth. Like, I became very well known for like being brutally honest about outfits. People would ask me, what do you think about this outfit? Because I'd be like, that to me looks like little girl on the prairie, not I'm going to suck your dick really hard. Like, do you want to make money or what? But that's just, I wasn't being mean. People would say I was rude or a bitch or whatever. And it's like, I'm just saying what I would want to hear. And I just find that males, I don't know, it was either water off a duck's back or they were the same and their delivery was the same. So I always, had more of a rapport in platonic relationships with males due to that, and being unmasked in the way I speak, the delivery of my speech, things like that. And so that goes to monitoring and altering the tone of your voice. When I was younger, I listened back to recordings because I did radio broadcasting. I was on radio shows and my voice was very high pitched. It was like, hello, that was not me. I was trying to suppress my resting bitch face probably, but you know, you hear my voice. This is my voice. So, yeah. But I would try and appear friendlier, like I'm not a threat to you, that kind of thing. And that's exhausting. But, you know, as Paz Bazaar, I can just be me, which is fantastic. So you see, it's not like you fully unmask or you fully mask. There's nuances and there's spaces in between that. And I just like to say, because I don't want to be attacked by people, I mean, whatever. Everyone's going to be attacked by people. Even Eckhart Tolle will be attacked by people. These are just my experiences. So it's not the same for every autistic or ADHD. It certainly is my experience. Now, for example, I talk about hiding sensory sensitivities. Yeah. A lot of things bug me, like the tram. And that's why I will stand up and I will face looking out the window. Even when there's heaps of space, I need that. I worked at a hospital as an operating theatre tech for some time, and I love the job and I love the people, and I couldn't deal with the fluorescent lights. I couldn't deal with it. And the noises of the machines. And ultimately, I didn't know why. Because I didn't have my diagnosis back then. I just kept going back and being like, you know, what is it? And people were like, is it the late nights? Is it long shifts? I was like, no, I like all of that. But yeah, I have sensory sensitivities, and now I am more aware of them and either remove myself or communicate that to someone. Yeah, so that's really helpful. Now, before I go into camouflaging, I would just like to say that the cool thing, the really fucking cool thing about diagnosis is that now that I know, have been finding and exploring a framework that works for me, but not just advocating for myself. It's actually caused me to be even more in tune with my body and even more present with myself in any given moment. And I find myself constantly tuning in, and it's so weird. It's like I'm reparenting myself, because I do that with my kids and I'm very hypervigilant with them and always tuning into them and asking them, you know, are you thirsty? Are you this? Or I'm just tuning in, right? And noticing. And now I've been doing that with myself. And not to say that I never did. I was always pretty good at that. I've given you the feelings alarm technique. I use a lot of somatic body exercises, but now it's amplified. It's really amplified. And it's to the point where after I have interactions with people, I will tune in to how I felt and give myself space to process. Because I can't do it in the moment necessarily, because it's a lot of sensory overwhelm and I'm just concentrating on too many things. But then afterwards is when I can really do that. So yeah, it's really interesting too. On the note of masking, I found that culturally it's been different spaces and different cities and different places have felt more safe for me to unmask than others. So that's why coming into identity politics, I've always felt really a lot safer in queer spaces rather than heteronormative spaces, more marginalized spaces, where people are typically less judgmental. My friendship circles are very diverse, wildly diverse. And, I would say I don't have very many vanilla cishet friends as a result. And yeah, I think that definitely comes into it a lot. Yeah, but when I was in Berlin, I always call it my spirit city because I was really unmasked there. I was just me. I was just rocking around in latex, just on the street on any given day, carrying a transparent bag with my dildos and glitter, like whatever, anything goes. And so I was just me. Same with New Zealand. I was like people used to describe me as quirky and pretty out there. People thought I was on drugs all the time. I actually had a best friend who didn't like me because they always used to see me with my eyes closed up at the front at a gig at drum and bass, and they just assumed I was high. And I hand out crystals to people and glitter and shit, and just like, you know how people are like, hi, how are you? This is another masking trait, or camouflaging rather, which we'll get to. But I would be like, what is the thing that you fear the most? Like skip the small talk. I'd just be like, what is your fantasy? Like your ultimate, like I keep in mind, I didn't even know their name, but that was just how I rolled when I was in New Zealand. And fuck, people thought I was weird. And yes, did it open me up to predatory behavior and people who exploited me? Yes, it did. But I was very free and happy. And then there's this thing that happened when I came to Melbourne, I remember, and people would tell me, people are kind of pretentious here. Darwin is another place I've always felt really like free to be me. I went to high school there for a time. I was a diplomat brat, so I moved schools a lot, but I went to high school there. I also was there as an adult, and I also spent some time there and lived there for a couple of years when my child was born prematurely there. And I don't know, people just don't give a fuck, and it's full of hippies. And I remember when I came here and I started slowly changing, and it was just like the things that used to be acceptable, or people just would be like, yeah, you're so out there, ha ha ha, it was not okay, and people didn't like it. And I have examples from all the times, many different times. I remember I used to carry around a speaker with my music because it made me happy, and just like hold it to my ear when I was just walking, just to do whatever. And I had a friend, and I was meeting them, and they were a new friend, and they were like really annoyed. In New Zealand, everyone thought it was cool. And even in London, like, yeah, I mean, okay, I was hanging out with a lot of people who were taking a lot of drugs. So that's another thing. I found I didn't have to mask in spaces where people were high or really drunk, because, they were just like, yeah, sweet. It wasn't as noticeable. But then, this new friend was like, are you going to carry that around, like, with you in the city? I was like, yeah, do you want me to put it lower? I can put it lower, the music. And then I was moving while I was walking, and she was just like, this is so cringe. And I was like, okay. And I was deflated, and I turned it off. I remember feeling like absolute shit. And that's when it all started changing. And like, I had a really toxic ex who was really, on the one hand, that's why he was drawn to me, because I was so free. And he was like, you just do the weirdest shit. Like, I remember seeing a homeless man and then like giving him pizza. And then I was like, oh, I'll give you $2 for the rest of the pizza. And he was like, yeah, okay. And I would just do things which I didn't see any problem with, but other people were like embarrassed by, or were like, hey, that's too much. It's okay if you spontaneously suck my dick in an alleyway. That's really cool. But don't do things that might embarrass me, like that. And it's so weird too, right? Because I remember I remember bumping into a client, and I didn't know they were there. I was just walking, and I had my headphones on. I was listening to a sick drum and bass mix, and I was just kind of dance walking and had my bass face on, and they saw me and did a slight wave. And then when they saw me next, they were like, you seem really happy. You have a really good life. And I was just like, yeah. And then I changed it, because it's cute when you're 18, 19, even in your 20s, and then society tells you you should grow the fuck up, right? And become an adult. I mean, what kind of rules are these? Why? Yeah, so basically I need to move around a lot, and if I don't, the energy gets pent up inside me. So when it comes to being a parent, I fully encourage my kids to unmask and do all the hand flapping they need, and it's just like really cool when we can do that in our home. During the lockdowns, I was so happy because I realized now, I didn't realize at the time, as I said, I wasn't diagnosed back then, but I wasn't suppressing my stims. I wasn't camouflaging. I had so much energy, and I felt like survivor's guilt in the sense that all these people were really sad, and a lot of my friends sank into deep depression, but I was like, this is my best life. Why? I was DJing every day. My kids and I were dancing on the table. I always used to experience synesthesia, you know. And so it really makes sense. So what is camouflaging? Camouflaging, it goes a step further. It's not about suppressing your natural traits, but it's about imitating neurotypical behavior. Again, this is not something that I consciously do. I'm not like, I will study, although that's a lie. I do study neurotypical behavior. I'm so fascinated by it, and I'm such a philosopher, and I've always been like this, but I just assumed everyone did it. You know, like there's these YouTube videos on how to be charismatic and how to be likable, and I would watch hours and hours and hours of these YouTube videos, particularly when I was working in venues, because I was like, okay, people would initially think I was good looking, but then it's like, whoa, either they'd love me because they're like, this bitch is crazy, or they'd be like, this bitch is just crazy. So, and you know, in that kind of environment, it's important. It's like sales, yeah? Well, it is sales. So I realized that I was different, and I realized that I was weird, and I would have to be something else. And I've said this before. This is a big part of why I don't like working in vanilla venues, because I have to mask and camouflage so much of myself that it's just like really, it's worse than acting. Acting, I can even be more natural. Yeah. So anyway, back to, I told you this was going to be a really unmasked episode. I'm like doing all the things where I'm going off on tangents and all over the place, but I will redirect to where I was initially. So I just thought everyone watched YouTubes on how to be a normal fucking person, right? And I remember saying this to my psychologists and therapists over the years. I remember saying it to a fellow autistic friend recently, when I was going through the diagnostic process and the assessment process. And I was like, but heaps of people, these videos have like millions of views. And they were like, yeah, millions of autistics. Which I thought was hilarious because, yeah, checks out. So yeah, camouflaging, it's more of a strategic effort to blend in socially. And maybe it might not be like, for me, it was subconscious, and then it was like, oh, okay, so you notice the thing, and then you're like, I've got to do something about it. Just like at the venue, I noticed, this is not working for me, so I just have to change what I'm doing. Okay, so I would learn and mimic social scripts, like saying, how are you? Even if it feels meaningless to me. It does feel fucking meaningless to me. By the way, when I say that, I'm just doing the thing that you expect me to do. I'll be honest. Like, I don't care if someone asks me how I am. And I encourage my children, I'm like, I say to my kids, you know what? You don't have to. I mean, people will do it and people might think you're odd, so prepare for that. But, you know, there are people who love that you don't do small talk. I've learned that people, this one took me a while. This one took me a very long while to realize that people, when they ask, how are you, don't actually fucking want to know. So now I don't overshare. But again, the context changes. Sometimes when I'm talking to my friends or a close client or my supervisor, like they'll be like, so how's your week? How's everything going? I said this just the other day. I was like, do you really want to know? Or is this just a nicety? This is just one of those exchanges. And they always laugh because it does change actually. And they're like, oh yeah, don't talk at me. Or they'll be like, oh no, I really want to know what's going on. I'm like, thanks. Because I can't tell the difference actually. I can't. I really have tried to understand. And so I'm just like, okay, check in with a person. And if I don't feel like they're a trusted person to check in with, and clarify that, I'll just do the, good, fine, thanks, how are you? That's what you want from me, right? Not, well, this happened to me and I had this profound epiphany. You don't want to know. Yeah. Practicing facial expressions in a mirror to match expected emotional responses. I don't do this. A lot of my friends have told me they do this. I will kind of coach myself if it's for a big thing. So I do it for like big job interviews, things like that. Now I actually record myself before something, like I used to, like if it's an important thing. So I used to pre-record my lectures, but now it's become a skill that I'm better at. So I don't need to record them anymore. Thank goodness, because it took a lot of time to listen back to it, because I think I'm delivering something fine. And then apparently it sounded harsh, or apparently it sounded like I thought the person was stupid, but I really am not meaning to. And that's another thing with feedback. So I have a business mastermind that I'm a part of, and I'm the kind of person who wants like constructive criticism, and I like the more explicit the better. Like all my mentors in my life, they're the ones that are like, nah, or this is like what I suggest, you know, and not sugarcoating and not faffing about. And I've learned to keep quiet in those situations, which is actually really hard for me. I have to get out a bunch of fidgets. So I was in this mastermind last night and I had to get so many fidgets out and just suppress and turn off the video camera a few times so that I could just do my facial expression of, that was a shit idea, or I wouldn't do that, or tell them, because I realized that most people want a gold fucking star. They don't want actual feedback, which for me, I'm the opposite. Don't give me a fucking golden star. Like, that's just the fucking easy way out. Like, I want to know if this is a good idea or not. Like, I don't need you to stroke my ego. I don't need no brownie points, but that's just me. And I've learned that not everyone thinks like me, even though it's more logical and makes more sense. So yes, that's camouflaging for me. Really, I guess I don't do the facial expression so much, but matching expected emotional responses. Like, I do that a lot, and I've had to really limit myself, because it's like, okay, I can do this for an hour, but 2 hours, then the truth will come out. Like, I had a very heated meeting with one of my kids' teachers, and they really pissed me off. And the limit for me is 20 minutes. I can camouflage for 20 minutes and seem like a normal adult. But then after that, I'm going to say that I think they're an ignoramus. There you go. And I will probably start to say the truth and recommend some resources to them, and then they will feel belittled, and that's just not productive, is it? So yes, I've learnt the whole matching expected emotional responses. I think as well, that's why I like how clear the dominant submissive relationship is. It's like, you know your fucking place. I know what I'm doing. It's very clearly defined roles. I like that. If you step outside the bounds, it's like, okay, I've got to apply leadership again. I like the clear. I like how clear it is. I don't have to be like, oh, well, this is a platonic thing, and oh, this is a business thing, and oh, but they differ even within the context of the subgenre. Oh my God. Humans are so confusing. That's why I always thought I was an alien. And, you know, to the people who are always like, why do autistic people always talk about how autistic, why do they talk about their autism? It's like, fuck off. Honestly, if you were living in this world for 40 plus years and you thought you were a human, and then you went and got some tests from the doctors and then found out you were actually a dog, how would you feel? I'm not saying autistic people are dogs, but that's how I felt. I was like, whoa, I never belonged, and this is why. So yeah, it's just, you know, and then going through all those memories, fuck, it's a lot. It's like looking back on all my life and then applying a new narrative to it, yeah? So back to camouflaging. It can also be, so we've got learning and mimicking social scripts, things like, how are you, even though I don't fucking care, and I know you fucking don't. Practicing facial expressions in a mirror, or matching, like practicing expected emotional responses. Oh, I thought of a funny one for that. So once I had this really important job interview and I went through all the different ways that it could go, I scripted it, and one of my best friends, fuck, she's amazing, sat with me for 5 hours while I did this thing, and she recorded it for me and played mock interviewee. Like, that's a lot of work, yeah? So you can imagine how exhausting it is. And I used to do this with intros when I first started sex work. So I would be like, okay, so if they ask me in the intro, how are you? Don't actually say, come up with this response and this response. Oh, nah. And that's why I like my clients who are my regulars, and they know me, and they know that I'm quirky, quotation marks, whatever. You know what I'm saying. Okay, so the other one is copying others' mannerisms, humor, or speech patterns to fit into a group. This one, yeah, this one is full on. I used to do it in high school more. I would like see, okay, who is the popular one, and then try and do that or a version of that. And I really dumbed myself down. You know the movie Mean Girls when Lindsay Lohan pretends to be like bad at maths? That was me. I was a geek, but it got to the point where I actually became bad at maths. And it was all because I was trying to be cool. So yeah, that backfired. And unfortunately, I never became good at maths again. So yeah. Anyway, I've noticed it a lot more with the kids. So as a parent, you know, coming home, they're more impressionable, I suppose. And they'll come home and they'll be like, literally. I'm like, who the fuck have you been talking to? Firstly, it's not literally. You mean to say figuratively. Don't give me the twitchy eye now. And then also, you are more intelligent than this. Where the fuck is this coming from? So yeah. I don't think I've ever been able to match anyone's humor. I've been told by many people that I'm really fucking funny. And the interesting thing is, I don't try to be. As soon as I try to be, it's really bad. Like, it's really dad joke, mum joke like. But yeah, and I think it's because of maybe the tone of voice that I have and the delivery, but I'm usually just calling out things and saying them as they are, and sometimes the delivery is off because I'm not reading the landscape, and people are like, ooh, you said that, you went there, and it's like, what? It's the truth. And then you're so funny, but I'm not trying to be. Yeah. So basically, camouflaging and masking, they're survival skills, especially for neurodivergent people in environments where being different isn't safe or accepted. That's fucking sad. However, like masking, camouflaging is draining and often leads to feelings of inauthenticity or alienation. Yes, I have said to friends recently, I feel like I am becoming me again. It's like, where have I been all these years? Oh, I had to suppress that. I had to be like, you know, the mother. I had to be like a responsible adult. But no, I'm the fucking mum who dances on the table. I'm the wild one. That's me. I'm embracing it now. And if I can embrace that for my kids and wouldn't want them to suppress themselves, well, inner child, I'm getting hippie now. So what are the differences? So masking and camouflaging, they involve hiding or altering aspects of yourself. Masking is about suppressing what feels natural. So if I was masking on the tram today, I would not have had my massive smile. I would not have allowed myself to experience synesthesia. I would have definitely not allowed myself to stim with my hands. That's also why I love DJing, because you get to stim and it's just normal. Bass face, yeah. Yeah, so masking is about suppressing and what the natural feelings that you have. And camouflaging is about actively performing what feels unnatural, like, hi, how are you? I'm fine, thanks. Ugh. Yeah. So masking could be seen as holding back a stim. It's not just that, it's more than that. I don't want to like reduce it down like that, but it's a good way to think about it. Camouflaging is more like if you're mimicking small talk or faking eye contact, because that's what's expected. Another note on eye contact, I have noticed I don't do it as much anymore, because it's interesting. In the assessment, I thought, oh my God, I'm high masking. What if they don't think that I'm autistic because I'm so good at masking? When I got back the notes and when they went through my report with me, apparently my eyes dart around. Like, it's like I remember that I should be looking at a person. And then when I realized that, I was like, I'm just going to experiment with it a bit. And I find that I like a mix, like to check in with a person. But when I'm talking or if I'm explaining something, I find that I do need to look away. And then also if I'm listening, if I'm staring into someone's eyes and making eye contact, I'm not actually listening. So yeah, I found that a mix of eye contact, maybe 70-30%, like with 30% being the direct eye contact percentage portion. That feels pretty good to me. So yeah, and even with video cam, because there's so much going on when you're doing online stuff, I find the same. So if I'm doing a mix of things, it's, like I was saying, it's not as bad if I get to move, and if I'm camouflaging my script, it's not as bad if I've got different accommodations like fidget toys or I get to move around. But when it becomes all of those things impacted for a longer duration of time, I just can't do it. So for an example would be, I don't know, sitting in school, sitting in a classroom, having to sit down and pay attention because otherwise you get told off. Things like that. Or if it's a workplace that is like that. And you really, when I look back at all the jobs that I've had and I've been successful in, they've been jobs which allowed me to have degrees of that. So early childhood was one of them. being a kindergarten teacher and even in childcare, get to move around a lot. And it was very physical. Same within the hospital. I really liked that. So why am I talking about this? Well, it's really important to know that masking and camouflaging are survival strategies. And it reflects the pressure on us. It reflects the pressure neurodivergent people face to conform in a world that doesn't accommodate us. And it comes at a cost. And it's linked to burnout. It's linked to mental health struggles. It's linked to a loss of self. And that's why now when people think I'm weird, if people think I'm crazy, it's like, I think you all look crazy when I open up my eyes from an amazing synesthetic experience and you're all staring at your phones like fucking zombies, looking depressed on your tram and your suits, and fuck that. So now I don't want to conform. I mean, it's very interesting because a lot of my friends, like my close friends that I've had for years, were like, what? You mask? When I was like, I'm autistic. I found out I'm even crazier than what I am. Like, I am way more playful. I'm way more loud. I'm way more out there. And they're like, but you are already. And I was like, well, no, there's more. And yeah, I just don't care anymore. I just don't care because the cost of it has been so great. And actually, to be honest with you, it attracted the wrong people to me. Whenever I was masking or camouflaging, those clients that like that version, those friends that like that version, those romantic partners that like that version, firstly didn't even fucking like me because it was a made up thing. I watched some YouTube video of how to fucking act, and just not to be rejected from the tribe. You know, I wanted acceptance, but now I fucking accept me. And it's like, you know, your vibe attracts your tribe. And it's interesting to note, when I was 18, I was with a Hare Krishna, weird psychedelic partner. They built a treehouse above a cemetery, and it's like, this is New Zealand, it's fucking cold in winter, right? And dark. And they was so weird, and that was my most unmasked time, and they were my people, like weird people. They're my people. So if I'm not masking and camouflaging, I'm attracting my people. I remember some people met up with me when we were in Melbourne, and they're like, oh, you've changed. And it's like, yeah, well, part of it was trauma. And part of it was because I've been rejected so much. And at the time I didn't get it, but now I really do. And I just now at 41 am like, embrace you. So I just want to say it's important to create environments where people feel safe to drop the mask. That's why I love BDSM. That's why I love kink. Stimming freely, engaging authentically, both in personal relationships and in wider society, is really important. It's really important to challenge it. Again, I know this is a privilege. It can be dangerous. It can be fucking dangerous to unmask. I've been in really fucking, I don't even want to go there, unsafe situations. Let's just say I've nearly died 9 times. I'm like a freaking cat, right? It is a privilege, and not everyone can mask. I'm saying this as someone who was diagnosed level 2 autistic, whatever the levels, we won't even go there. But the point is, not everyone can mask. Therefore, not everyone can freely mask and unmask. But I think the main thing is just be you, embrace yourself, love yourself for who you are. And if people don't like that, they're not your people. You want to hear no from the no people so you can hear yes from your yes people. And that's all I have to say about that for now. I've got plenty more to say about it, probably in another episode. But let's say it one more time because it's powerful. You want to hear no from your no people so you can hear yes from your yes people. Bye for now.